Hey, welcome to my channel. You are here. Make sure that you subscribe to my channel. Make sure that you like this video, and then also drop me some comments and questions below. I was actually looking for some feedback for some other project ideas that I have going on, and I had an option to talk about topics that might interest you. And one of them actually was a great point that I feel like deserved a video. And the question was, how do you balance prep life and normal life? Or just finding that balance. And I think that that's an excellent thing to talk about. I have been doing this for 15 years. I started competing. I did my first competition when I was 16, but I started prepping for it when I was 15. I'm 30. So it's been a long time. And there are a lot of levels of balance to hit on for this. So I guess it just matters how in-depth you want to take it. Obviously, physically, your body can only do so much or push so far. That's not always sustainable. I think a lot of people struggle with going through a prep, showing up at a competition and then seeing their bodies look better than they've ever seen it before, and then have to be okay to break up with that and like break away from that and say like, okay, that was fun and enjoyable, but it's time to put it down for a minute. And I guess it depends on your long-term competitive goals too. So if you want to compete for many years, and this isn't just a one-time event for you, this is highly important to keep in mind, because one thing that I've always kept in the back of my head, and I forgot who initially said this, but I've heard it so many times over the years that this is a marathon, not a sprint. And that has helped me so many times when I feel like I'm struggling with the pressure of I have to be this all the time, or I have to be improving all the time. I think no matter what level we're talking on, whether it's physical or mental or emotional or whatever, that it's important to look at this as phases and rotating through those phases. As a prep coach, part of my package, part of my services deliberately includes post-prep competition stuff. It's so hard. It's almost harder than actually going into a prep, that I try to help retain my clients, because I know there's going to be an after crash, whether it's days later, weeks later, months later. My job is to try to keep everyone stable and not to sink or go off the deep end, because we get on these really high highs in prep, and then afterwards it just all comes crashing down. And so I think part of that stems from the fact that this is out of balance. And I think a lot of people want to hear like, oh, bodybuilding's awesome and it's great. It is awesome and it is great, but it's not normal. It's not like it's not your typical sport, because what we do is 24 hours a day. Some sports are short bursts, like they go into practice and they practice as hard as they can, and they might be thinking about it all the time or very passionate about it. But then a lot of times they get to go live alternate lifestyles, or it doesn't matter if they don't get as much sleep, or maybe their nutrition doesn't matter as much. But like for bodybuilders, it's like every little thing, like, oh, I got in 2 ounces of water less yesterday, I feel terrible today, or like anything, like sleep, stress, missing a meal, too many meals. It's a 24-hour job, and so that's what I mean by taking it out of balance. Like, this is a very extreme sport, and I would be lying to you if I wanted to pretend that this is always healthy. And that's just the way I feel about it. It's not a healthy sport in general, because of the extremes that we have to push through, which is odd, because we want it to be healthy and we want to put health first. I'm not talking about extreme conditions. Of course, those are things to prioritize. If you have a health issue come up, you need to prioritize that and pull out of the competition until you figure it out. But what I mean is, like, it is out of balance. Nothing is in balance. It's a huge sacrifice. And that's just while you're in prep. I can't tell you that I've figured this out for myself. In fact, this past competition that I did, the Chicago Pro, about 6 weeks ago, maybe 8 weeks ago, I thought I was doing a good job of balancing everything while I was in it. And then after the show, there were some areas in my life that needed to be tended to. Other things had gotten out of balance. My business, I always try to put my clients first. My relationships with people, my home life, my personal enjoyment of things. So I felt that. I felt like I had hit the peak with my sport, and then I came home and there was just kind of a delay and like a gap that I needed to fill to get everything back in balance. And it was making it really hard for me to enjoy my pro success, because as a person, I felt like I wasn't being pro in all areas of my life. And I kind of beat myself up over that for like a month. I was like, why does it matter if I turned pro and did a pro show if I can't maintain my friendships and relationships? Or if people can't count on me, or if I'm not doing a good job as a trainer or a coach? That doesn't make me, that doesn't justify the pro event happening in one area in my mind. But after kind of mulling it over for a couple of weeks, I accepted the fact that that's kind of what I had to do to push to that next level, to achieve something that I've never achieved before. I had to rotate my priorities, and some things did have to suffer. I'll be honest, like for that last month, my enjoyment suffered a lot. It was the hardest month of my entire life. If you guys watching my other videos, you know what happened that week. It was the hardest week that I've ever had in my life, ever. And I got probably the most accomplishment out of any competition that I've ever done, and it was worth it to reach that level. But I had to kind of come home and clean up the mess. And the first thing I started with was just maintaining my physical state. I had already discussed with my coach how I was going to reverse diet, our plan. We took things just as meticulously as we did for the show. I still checked in twice a week. We still very, very gradually reduced cardio and added food back in. I went right back to the gym. I didn't take time off. That to me, the routine was what was going to keep me moving forward and to help me rebalance while things settled. But there were business things that I had to do. My clients are really awesome and understanding when I compete, but I have to be more available most of the time. Sometimes when I compete, I have to be less available to conserve myself or find a backup coach or someone else to help me do my job. But in the long run, I can't continue that forever. I know I need to balance that. I need to be there for my clients, not just in my job, just returning the support that they support me with. I think that's really important. My friends, a lot of my friends are getting married and having babies, and I was just as excited about their life events as I am for my competitions. And so it was important that I was there, that I showed up at these events, and that I reached out to them and said, like, hey, I'm happy for you. Even whether I could be there or not, I wanted them to understand that part of my social balance was coming back to life with just simple things like going to get coffee, or phone calls. Like a lot of times when I get ready for a competition, I'm so blocked off. I turn my phone on silent. I go do not disturb. I schedule phone calls because I know I need to be in my mindset while I'm working, but I do have to like sort of block off time to talk to my friends, which sounds ridiculous. So after prep, one of the first things that I do is reach back out to all of the people that were there patiently waiting while I did what I had to do. I write thank you cards. Like I handwrite thank you cards to people who have been anything helpful in me achieving what I needed to achieve. So if I could, I'd reach out to them in person, just visit with them, enjoy their company, asking about them. It gets easy to kind of get wrapped up in yourself when you're competing, because bodybuilding is a selfish sport. It's self-oriented, and it's exciting when you win something. That's cool. Or like when you just come off of a prep season, even if you didn't win, but you just had a really tough period. I think the first thing that everyone's excited, but I think it's important to say like, hey, what's going on in your life? Like that's the first thing I do is I try to catch up. It's easy now with social media. I kind of know what's going on, but I like to hear about what's going on with everyone else's life, because the way I feel about it is like my life, I'm not special and it's not that exciting more than anything else. So I feel like we should all have that balance. There have been preps where it makes me feel self-absorbed if I don't get to catch up with my friends and I don't know what's going on with them. I don't like that feeling. So I try really hard not to let that happen. I try really hard to go back and read missed text messages and make sure that I reply, because I'm really bad about that. But mainly just letting people know that I appreciate them and that they played a huge role in my success or suffering, whatever. So those things are important. As far as emotional things, that's kind of tough, because I think it kind of depends on, I'm going to leave placings completely out of this. It's going to depend on your level of satisfaction after the event. I've had some preps that were not as challenging as others, and I feel like at the end of it, it was a little bit easier for me to move forward from, because I didn't feel like I had to invest myself as much. But the preps that I went 200% and I gave every ounce of anything that I had, those are the preps that they also come back and bite me the most. I think they're mentally exhausting, they're physically exhausting, very draining, and so even if there is success to follow, it still kind of wipes me out a little bit. It's like I don't have capacity to get really happy or really sad about anything. And I've kind of talked about this briefly, but after this year, what happened when I went to Junior USA's, I was almost positive I was going to turn pro there, and it didn't happen. It just wasn't my day. And the girl who did one absolutely deserved it. But there was a whole month of people coming up and they would say, "Oh, congratulations on third place." And I was like, "Yeah, thank you. That's not what I trained for. That's not what I suffered for. That's not what I dieted for." I was so mad at myself. I didn't really feel like I had left anything on the table, but because it's nobody else's responsibility, I took that blame. And I got really mad. I was like, that's not what I came here for. And that's not what my potential was. And so it was a really hard thing for me to gracefully accept what people were trying to do, which was to be supportive and congratulate me. But in my mind, there was always this voice afterwards where I was like, I'm better than third place. Like, that's not good enough for me. And so I had to smile because I knew what they meant and I appreciated what they meant. But I was actually hurting inside because I was so frustrated. I was so frustrated. And so for that whole month, I had to go somewhere else mentally. And I was pretty shut off emotionally from everything. Even my boyfriend noticed the difference. And it's like, I could have done that for a short term, but I couldn't do that now or after a show. And so after that drain for a whole month, then I had these really high peaks. I did turn pro at Junior Nationals, and then I did a pro show 3 weeks later, so it sort of snowballed with this excitement. But even the excitement was draining. So when I came back from that show, I just wanted to chill out and settle. And my first thought was like, oh, it's time to party and celebrate this event that I've been working for 15 years. But then what I realized was, while I was ready to celebrate, everyone else was ready to move forward. The rest of my life was ready to move forward. So I kind of had to allow myself these breaks in the day to process, mentally process what had happened, let go of all that heaviness that I was carrying, but then also kind of come back to real life a little bit quicker than I anticipated. So just allowing myself that time to reflect was critical in my emotional health after this show. I would say that this was a great prep season, but I have had the same time for myself even in a not so great prep season. So just allowing yourself alone time and not to really think about anything specific, but just see what comes to your thoughts, see what comes to your mind without forcing anything. So it's good to be social after a show, but you have to give yourself that time, because you're the only person who felt that to that extreme. And I think it's really important to reflect on not what everyone else says, not what the judges say, not what your coach says, not what your significant other says. I think it's really important to give yourself that time to think about how you feel. And sometimes you can't really justify your feelings, and sometimes that gives you the answer to whatever might be a mystery for the future. So if you don't spend that time with yourself, you're never going to break that down and gain the real lesson or what you may have actually learned about yourself to either have closure with what you did or to be better next time. And that's why I say it differs on what your competitive goals are, because if this was a one-time event for you, hopefully you can have closure with it, and have satisfaction in yourself, even if you got last place or even if you won the whole show. But if you're going to be a continuing competitor, it's also important to say, okay, what could I have done better, or what did I do right, what worked for me, what did I figure out about myself, because that's going to be very valuable in the next time that you compete. So physically, just keeping balance, socially, we've talked about that. I would say mentally, I think it's important to set another short-term goal, but not necessarily fitness-related or competition-related at least. I like to set up monthly goals. And so usually following a show, I'll set up some sort of event where I have a little bit of a physical pressure to be in shape. Not perfect, of course, but just to keep me from going off the deep end or being tempted to. So usually that's a photo shoot, or I expedite a lot of our bodybuilding shows, or I go to bodybuilding shows. I put myself back in the setting that keeps me motivated. And so I like to go watch bodybuilding shows. I like to watch my clients' shows and be involved with them, because the way I look at it is I have to be a good role model. And so if I'm around those eyes, I'm going to be a lot more likely to act right when no one's looking. And so I set up a short-term goal, something physical. If it's not aesthetic, then it's usually like a fitness, anything really. I mean, for me, one of the things was going back to yoga. Haven't gone to yoga in forever, and so this month I was like, okay, I'm going to start going on Saturdays. That was my goal. I know a lot of people who do other athletics like powerlifting, weightlifting, CrossFit, marathons, Tough Mudders. There are several things that you can choose to say, I'm going to sign up for this event on this date, or I'm going to aim for this performance goal by this date. So it doesn't have to be based on looks. It just has to be something that you look forward to. Some people just use it like a vacation. Like, I'm going to schedule a vacation a month after the show, and I want to look and feel good on my vacation so that I can enjoy it. And I think that's a perfectly awesome goal. At least to slowly come back to balance out. And in terms of enjoyment, being honest with yourself and finding out, I can actually keep a list. I'm like, what did I miss? When I was sacrificing for this goal, what were the things that I missed? The first thing that I missed was just seeing my family. Being able to go out to my parents' house for a cookout and eat whatever I wanted, even though now it's I actually don't eat as crazy as I used to, but I just wanted that company. Something as easy as going on a nice walk, not for exercise, just to enjoy the air outside. Oh gosh, what else? I'm an artist, so I have a lot of art things that I like to do, so it's important to me to delve back into that. I'm sure everyone has some sort of a hobby that they're like, hey, I didn't get to do that as much as I wanted to over the last couple of months, and so I think it's really important to turn back to those areas of your life that if you're a diverse and multifaceted person, that's going to make you feel balanced. There have been several years where I was so caught up in competing that I set part of myself aside for too long, and I would get really down when everything slowed down. So I don't know wherever you're watching from, where I'm from in Kentucky, our competition seasons run from mid-March to early November. So from March to November, there's this momentum, and there's reasons, and there's social things going on, and there's competitions. And then around November, in December and January, it gets really quiet. And nobody's really paying attention. And nobody's dieting, except for the people that are getting ready for March. There's not a lot of eyes on you, and there's not a lot of things to keep you accountable, and that's usually when my thoughts settle. And that can be a really dark time for me, because that's when certain things are summoned up that maybe I didn't deal with emotionally, internally, and so that usually comes pouring out in a way that I can't control. But what I've started to figure out was a lot of that stemmed from me just not allowing myself to enjoy these things along the way. So instead of saying, I'm going to be a bodybuilder now and then I'm going to be an artist, I try to incorporate both. It's just one end of the spectrum or the other. So they both still exist. I just might do less art in a prep season, and I might do more art and not be so mentally focused on competing at other times of the year. but it was that restriction when I was like, oh, I can't do that, I'm busy, I'm committed to this sport. That was when I felt the worst, when I was the unhappiest, was when I denied myself of those small enjoyments. There is a way to enjoy all of your life in prep. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be so black and white and all or nothing. It's just you have to learn to trust yourself and to find things to make them work in a way that makes sense. Yeah, you can't eat cake every day while you're in prep. But if you can find flavors that remind you of cake that you're like, oh, I'm okay with this for now, then if in your off season you want to have some cake, have it, man. Like, just have a bite or two. You don't have to eat the whole cake. I used to be someone who, when I had cheat meals, they would be very extreme cheat meals, and I would diet super, super strict during the week, and then I would go basically, now admittedly, binge. I didn't realize it then, but now that I'm older and I see the difference, it's like, oh, that was actually binge behavior, because I was so restrictive. And it's funny because people ask me about my diet now, and technically, I've been doing If It Fits Your Macros for a whole year now, and I don't have cheat meals. I had some cupcakes after my last show, and I think last weekend I had some pizza. I can count less than 5 times in a year that I've had a cheat, and even when I did cheat, I still made that work within my numbers that I've been given. So I can have bites of pizza, I can have burgers, I can have those things. It's just I have to do it in a controlled way, and part of that has just been me admitting with myself, like, if I don't deprive myself so much all the time, then I don't feel that need to go crazy when I get the opportunity. And alternatively, it's like if I can have those things occasionally, usually I don't even want them. Even if someone did say, Autumn, you can have a cheat meal, I'm kind of satisfied if I can stick with my macros and just have them occasionally. That being said, even though I have those options, I don't eat crap food every single day. I actually eat the same foods that I usually eat. It's tuna, chicken, egg whites, oats, sweet potatoes, and like nuts, maybe some rice. That's just what I like. That's what I feel best on. But if I want to have a cake pop, I'm going to have a cake pop. So I've kind of allowed myself some more freedom, but in having more freedom, somehow I feel like I have more control. So if you're doing this on your own, find that balance. Like, find what it is that you're needing or what you're craving, and work that in a way that benefits you, so that you can enjoy it, so that you can do this longer. If you're not doing it on your own, discuss with your coach, because they should know what to do to find that balance and help you. Like, I have a lot of different clients, and so I have to kind of find, like, psychologically what triggers them, or what they actually want, what we should stay away from, so that it doesn't snowball into something else. So it's important to discuss with your coach and say, like, hey, here's what I want, here's what I need, how can we make this work, because of the extremities of competing. So mentally, you've got to learn yourself, and take the time to learn yourself, and not stay so busy and moving forward all the time if you can't come back and reflect or be present. That is so important year-round, and setting some goals, some small things that you're going to feel good about just while things settle. There's also different phases of things. So whatever aspect we're looking at, I just look at it like just a rotating cycle. So sometimes my cycles are going to be very activity driven. Like I'm gonna have a lot of focus on my athletics, and then it'll rotate into more of a business phase, and then it'll rotate more into a creative phase, and then I just sort of keep doing that all year. I've kind of learned myself in a way that it's like, okay, if I'm going to peak in season for bodybuilding, then there needs to be a peak with my business stuff. There needs to be a peak with whatever projects I have going on or other opportunities. So there's sort of that ebb and flow to your year, but it's okay to instead of trying to do it all at once, instead of do everything at once and then relax the rest of the year, or the opposite. It's okay to kind of bounce around, and just rotate them so that you're always progressing as a person. I don't read a whole lot, but if I were going to read, it would probably be more in my off season rather than my prep season. But I like to listen to audiobooks when I'm in prep because I'm busy. So that keeps me in tune. So there's different ways to still make time or be efficient in the rest of your life, so that you can really hone in on your skill when it's necessary. This is one more thing that I find helps me feel really balanced. And I realize that not everyone feels this way or has this type of access or lifestyle or whatever. We all have different lifestyles, but I have been a long-time competitor in our state, and I try to stay involved as much as I can. Whether that means I have test judged before, I'm not a judge, but I've also worked our shows, expedite our bodybuilding shows. I'm a posing coach, I'm a prep coach, and I just really love our sport and the people in it. So something that really helps me feel balanced is to give back to my sport. Because this sport has created so many learning opportunities for me and opportunities for growth. The people that have been around me for so long, or even just people who are just now entering my life, they give something to me. And to balance back out, it makes me feel really good to give something back to them. And like I said, I feel grateful and lucky to have the opportunities that I do to reach everyone. So if I can do that in person, like I like to give free posing clinics here and there, I like to give free tips here and there, I like to give pep talks and encouragement. I like to help people have a good competition experience or understand our sport better. That's why I'm making these videos a lot, is because this hopefully will help somebody and give back. And so part of balancing for me means whatever was passed on to me, I want to pass it on to somebody else. Like if I was having a hard day in prep, and somebody boosted my confidence or gave me like a little fuel that day, I want to do that for other people. And so part of rebalancing in my sport for me is to give back to my community however I can do that. And if you are struggling with how to do that, I think just honestly just sharing your raw feelings helps a lot. We each have a different journey and a different goal, and we've all come from different places. So if you don't know how to give back, you can at least talk about how you felt, because if anything, somebody else who's struggling might relate to that. And you might actually really help that person, even if they're on the other side of the world and you've never met them before. That's honestly, that's the pure reason I'm doing this stuff, is because I know I can talk a lot, but I hope that something I'm saying relates to someone and lets them know, like, hey, you're not alone. So that's to me probably one of the best ways to rebalance your life, is to give that back in any way that you can. So there's a lot of different components in rebalancing after competing, but I do find it really important to settle and find that baseline before you make another move. I know this drives me nuts, I've heard so many people where they walk off of a stage, they don't process, they don't reflect, and before you know it, they've already got their next 5 competitions scheduled, and it's back to back. Like they don't get to have that time, and so you're missing pieces. You're missing very valuable lessons and pieces to this big puzzle if you cheat yourself of that. So don't cheat yourself of that, because I promise you, bodybuilding isn't going anywhere. I've been doing this for a long time, and if anything, opportunities have grown and presented themselves. So it's totally okay just to take a break and maybe do nothing. Sometimes your competition season is so exhausting that your next plan for the rest of the year should be to do nothing and just chill out and enjoy the things in life that you're not going to get back because of time. You're going to run into this with anything you sacrifice, not just bodybuilding, but you need to be present. So however you need to do that for yourself and come back to being present in the rest of your life, that is going to make you feel more balanced. So there's no magic answer. My answer is going to be different than answer for you, the answer for somebody else. So that's why that internal reflection is so important. But hopefully some of the things that I've said might give you some things to think about. I really liked that question. So if you guys have more topics that you care what I think, then yeah, shoot me an email or a message or comment below here and subscribe so that you can hear my response, I guess. But give me some ideas of what you guys want to hear about, because I feel like I have a lot to talk about.
Thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch my video. Make sure that you hit subscribe to my channel. Make sure that you like this video if that's true and you liked it, and then leave any comments or questions or other topics that you'd like to hear me talk about below.